Welcome back to the Keeping the Dream Alive podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to sit down with Charlie Crowe, an employee here at Torch Technologies, to discuss the Torch's core values. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we kind of dive into the core values and kind of that process that you were a part of, talk a little bit about your role here at Torch.
Sure. Okay. I started at Torch back in, I guess it was the end of February in 2011, and worked a variety of different projects. But I've been in the same project for about the last 10, 11 years, working integrated air and missile defense for S3I, supporting some PEO missile and space systems. And I guess over the years, I've slowly kind of moved into more of a management role, and now I'm leading the air and missile defense business unit.
Awesome. Well, so I think a lot of people know of core values. I think you see it everywhere with businesses or organizations or nonprofits that core values are a big part of it. But for those who maybe don't know what core values are, how would you kind of summarize what core values are and why they're important for a business?
Yeah, so core values, I think, help define sort of the ethos or the culture of the company. Done well, they are a differentiator for, against the competitors, help define what makes you different. Also, I believe done well, they help people understand how to make decisions within their organization. You know, when you have a choice to do option A or option B, if option B doesn't very well align with the core values, you should probably opt not to do it. So it helps define, I think, that.
It's important for businesses too, because I mean, as the businesses grow and you're trying to cultivate that culture, I mean, especially when Torch first started to like what they are now in the employee size, having those core values kind of allows that culture that was there in the beginning that drove people to start the business, that is still driving the success of the business today.
Right. Yeah. We were obviously, as we grow, we are continually kind of worried about how do we make sure we maintain the culture that we have. And I think this is one way we do it. You use the core values to help further foster and edify the culture you already have.
Yeah. And Torch had core values prior to this recent sort of change in the core values. Talk a little bit about kind of what prompted that change and how you went from, I think, 7 to now 3.
Right. So I think everybody kind of realizes 7's too much. If you listen to experts, they kind of say the sweet spot, 3 to 5. You get higher than that, people start to, you can't remember that many. And so, there's that. And then of course our 7, some of them, and not to pick on any particular value, I guess I will, the value excellence. What does that really mean? Hard to, it's certainly something to strive for, but how does that set us apart? It's kind of nebulous. It doesn't really define who we are or why we are. It's really just kind of nebulous and doesn't really provide us a lot of guidance to make decisions. It doesn't set us apart.
Yeah. And you were part of the committee that kind of led this charge. What was that process like from, hey, we realize 7's too many, we should reevaluate the core values, to then having the conversations on how do we reevaluate them and then actually executing them?
Okay. Yeah. So just to rewind a little bit. So I think everybody has this realization that 7's too many and that our 7 weren't really hitting the mark. But inertia, left us where we are for a long time. And they've served us well. I mean, we've grown with the core values we have. So, some people may ask, why change? Well, I think, like I said, it's the realization that 7's too many and the ones that we have maybe are a little bit nebulous and don't set us apart. But I think the real motivating factor was some evergreen conference that happened, sometime within the last year, and some leadership. It finally kind of motivated them to let's go ahead and kick this off. And so we have a chief of staff forum over at Torch, and they decided they were going to motivate. They're going to use some of the senior managers to go set up these task force, these different task forces, and they have a variety of topics that they were going to handle. And they said, well, this core values topic is ripe for one of those. And so we introduced that in the chief of staff forum. And then we sent out, surveys to all the senior managers saying, hey, what do you think of these topics? Which one of these would you like to work on? And so the people that selected to work on the core values committee suddenly became part of that committee, right? And Joe Robinson, who's one of our directors here at Torch, he led that effort.
And that process, I mean, it's something that, it takes a lot of feedback from the employees. It takes a lot of feedback from leadership to then just solidify, hey, here's the 7. We want to go to 3. And how do we convey that's the 7? Because the 7, has gotten you where you are, gotten Torch where it is today. But you're also looking at the future and what you wanting the company to be. And I mean, even in the last year, a lot of distinctions have happened with Torch being a public benefit corp as well. And so going in that direction, I mean, the core values were a good opportunity to kind of assess and see, hey, what is the direction we want to go and how do we best achieve that? Kind of diving right into the core values. Talk a little bit about the first core value of being a ownership minded.
Yeah. Well, actually, could I rewind for just a second too? I guess part of what I want to say, I'll credit our leadership at Torch for really opening this up to us.
Yeah.
They did not give us a lot of constraints. They did have kind of a schedule for when they kind of wanted things done, but they really didn't ask us. They didn't put a lot of requirements on us. They just let us go figure it out and bring forward a solution. And so I think that helped a lot. They didn't say, bring me 3 core values. They left it kind of open-ended and let us meander through that.
How long did that process, like from, that task force being set up to then saying, hey, we've presenting the team or presenting the board with, hey, here's our core values. How long was that process?
Oh, it was probably half a dozen meetings over the course of 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And then a lot of time in between meetings, each of the individual committee members going out and doing some research and trying to figure out, hey, what do the experts say? What are the other companies doing? And then, in the meetings, we spent an awful lot of time, just kind of pondering through those things. What do we think would be receivable? What really helps define Torch? What really is if we had to distill all of the Torch culture, all the Torch values down to 3 to 5 core values, what would they be?
Yeah. And I think, as probably a better idea now, when the initial 7 were created, you were at one sort of level of Torch. Torch was at this level of size, this level of revenue, this level of, everything. And then when you grow and you develop into what they are today and what they're continuing to accomplish, core values, it's a good thing to assess those, and it's a good thing to make sure that they're still aligning you with what you wanted initially, but also is propelling you forward. And so 3 core values that you have now, you have mission focused, ownership minded, and community invested. Do you want to dive into mission focused first?
Sure. I would like to point out one thing too, right? When we came up with these core values, this wasn't anything that we're aspiring to be. This is what we think Torch really is and what has fueled our growth for the past 20 years. It really is trying to define what has made us great, what sets us apart, why we have achieved what we've achieved. So I don't think that this was, hey, we need new core values. We were really just defining the values we already had in a slightly different way.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's almost like these things were always a part of Torch. You just necessarily weren't putting them on paper or saying that they were. And I think, especially with the leadership probably involved with the committee, a lot of them had probably been here, you yourself included, been here for a long enough time to kind of see these things play out day to day, yearly, monthly, whatever it might be. And it was just kind of like putting pen to paper at that point.
Yeah.
And so mission focused, like I think, it's pretty direct as far as what it's entailing. And I think that was a big part of kind of moving in that direction. But what does that mean and why is it important to Torch?
Yeah, I really appreciate the notion of mission. I talk about it a lot with my employees, with our business unit. When I see a well-functioning team, people aren't defined necessarily by their job. They understand the mission that needs to get done. And so everybody hops on board on that mission. And if you really look through the new core values that we have defined, they're really all about people. It's all about people. Mission really is centered mostly on our customers and ultimately the warfighters. And to a degree, we talk about our teammates in the little narrative that we supply with the mission focus. But for mission focus too, it's not just part of that is growing a relationship with your customers, a relationship, trust and transparency, doing what's right for our customers, even when it's not best for Torch right now. We believe that doing what's right for the customer is what's best for Torch in the long term.
And then having everyone on your team and every team, all the employees on that same mission, so that they see, what does success look like? How do we achieve success? And how do we all, the 10, 12, 15 of your team or whatever it might be, all focused on that one thing? It allows you to provide the best results for your customers. It allows you to have the best experience for your customers. And at the end of the day, that reputation is important, especially as Torch continues to grow. The next sort of core value, ownership minded. I think we talk a lot about ESOP on the podcast. It's a big ethos of Torch. You can't talk about the ESOP. You can't talk about Torch without talking about the ESOP. It's just part of it. What does ownership minded mean, and how is it maybe different, or how does it kind of work hand in hand with being an employee owned company?
Okay. Yeah. This one I like. We were really debating where ownership belonged in the list or how it belonged in the list. And I think part of that might come from, we sometimes, I believe, overemphasize the monetary benefits of ownership. And that it's a great benefit. And I have benefited tremendously from being an owner at Torch. But we probably don't often enough talk about the responsibility of ownership, right? When you own something, you take care of it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is the responsibility of ownership. And we're signaling to our customers, to our employee owners, to the communities, to prospective employees. We're communicating to them how ownership empowers our employees to take hold of the work, to take responsibility for the work.
And I think that ownership mentality, it's a different way of looking at the employee ownership. It's a different way of looking at the ESOP, and it kind of helps the employees as a whole grasp that, hey, the work I do, I need to be proud of the work I do. I need to own the work I do. And then looking back at that mission focused, I'm owning it, and I'm fulfilling the mission. I'm accomplishing the goals that I need to accomplish. And I think, those work very hand in hand, I would assume, in the everyday sort of life of an employee and the work that you do here at Torch. Kind of now looking at sort of the outward focused core value, the thing that's dictating more of what's happening in our community. Big part of your new core value is being community invested. Why is the community so important to Torch, and how do you feel as though this core value kind of sums up what Torch is?
Torch has a long history of community support. Right. Bill O'Rourke still tears up when he tells the story about the Boy Scouts trailer. Torch Helps was founded early in Torch. And that's just a 501c3 that our employees run. It's funded by payroll deductions. And the administration of that 501c3 is covered by Torch. So all of the money we collect, we send to charities. Of course, from a corporate standpoint too, we give a lot. We're highly involved in the Village of Promise, have big involvement in the Community Foundation. We're always have huge showings at the Huntsville Heart Walk and the Liz Hurley Ribbon Run, for instance. Recently, of course, we sent a couple of trailers full of supplies. Last minute organization, just, hey, we got to do something because of the disaster that's going on in North Carolina with those hurricanes. And people were just compelled to do something. What do? Let's just do something. Let's gather supplies. And then we gathered up a bunch of supplies to organize those. And then some of our employee owners actually drove all the way up to North Carolina to drop those supplies off. Of course, we have Torch in Action. More of the hands and feet kind of arm, where Torch Helps is largely monetary support. Torch in action. We're showing up and doing what we can to help. And then if you just look across Torch, you'll find tons of other people at Torch who are volunteering in other, local charities or other just local organizations, serving on the board for the pool, serving on the board for the local basketball league, those kind of things. So giving back to the community has always been a big part of Torch. We understand too, we want to make a positive impact in the communities where we live and the communities where we work. So we just want to be community involved. We want to be a positive impact to all people, the people around us, the people we work with.
Yeah, and I think we've had people on to talk about Torch Helps in the past. We talk a lot about that. So if you want to know more about that, you can check out one of those episodes. But it's often kind of the underlying thread is I think we had a couple early episodes on in the podcast where people would talk about wearing a Torch shirt out in public, and they're having dinner, they're having lunch, or they're just at like the ball field, and people will come up and say, "Thank you so much for donating to this," and because they recognize the logo, they recognize the brand, and that's just a testament to the commitment that Torch has to the community. And it's pretty impressive to see. And I think, over the last little bit, we're actually highlighting a lot of these nonprofits on the podcast. So you'll be able to kind of learn a little bit more about what's actually happening in our community and how we, beyond just people that are listening to this that work at Torch, but people just in the community like myself can be a part and support these nonprofits that do amazing work. With these 3 new core values, how do you see employees or you yourself living this out throughout work and kind of even in the community element too? These core values are a big part of everyday life.
So I think we're already living out these core values. We didn't make core values to define who we want to be. Mm-hmm. We made the core values to define who we think we are, what we really are underneath, and what has driven our success for the last 2 decades. So I think we're already living those out. But what I think it means, part of what it meant to come up with the core values, we wanted core values that would help us when we were testing a decision. Right? What does it mean to have an ownership mindset as we approach a decision? How would that impact our decision if we have that in mind? So that's part of it. But I do think, right, for the mission focus, it's we sometimes run into circumstances where doing what's right for our customer is not to our direct benefit, and that's one of the ways we live that out. We treat our teammates, I think, exceptionally well, giving a lot of work share to other companies. Even though, I guess, right, we could go claim more of that. We could go push some of our teammates out. I see that happen on a pretty consistent basis, that we are honoring our teammates and trying to treat them fairly, with integrity, with respect, and helping support those folks. For ownership minded, and it sort of fits in well with the mission focus too. If you think about your job as just a job, what was on my job description, there will be some things that get left undone. And I think back to, right, it's kind of a cliche at this point, but the owner is willing to take out the trash. Whatever you have to do to move it forward. Not my job should not be, in anyone's vernacular, at Torch. You're an owner. You have a responsibility. If a job needs doing, the owner does it. Mm-hmm. And then for charitable organizations, right, it's just, showing up, realizing that we can leave the world in a better place. We can leave our communities in a better place. Rising tide, all that kind of cliche. Yeah. But it's a famous cliche because it's true. A rising tide does lift all boats.
Yeah, and I think it's incredible just to see. I think conversations like this and being able to kind of like talk through the process, what this means, from your perspective as someone on the committee, but also an employee here at Torch, is going to help propel the new workforce as they're coming in and they're able to have this asset to say, hey, here's what Torch is, here's what they do, here's what they believe in, and I want to be a part of that. So I appreciate you taking the last little bit and talking about the core values. It's exciting to see this transition for Torch, and I continue to look forward to the impact that you'll have in the employees that are here and the communities that you serve, and it's pretty incredible. But we'll put all information in episode notes, so if anyone wants to find out any more information about Torch, they can visit that. But thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thank you for having me.